with that, let's get started with the Q&A. Feel free to, I think we have a couple of questions already. And if you have any, questions that are coming to you right now, please start to put those in there, and we'll address those. So as we're getting some questions to come through, a common question that we get a lot, especially going back to this, the idea of the business case, we talk to a lot of customers about, return on investment, what is the ROI on this adhesive versus, our current process. So I guess the question is, what resources does Plexus have? A lot of times you've got, a small or medium-sized business, and they have to deal with their day-to-day all the time. They don't necessarily have the time or resources to do really in-depth cost studies or that kind of thing. Can you speak to that a little bit, Colin?
Sure. Yeah, that's something we can always help out with. We do have a few different tools that we work with for cost calculations and usage calculations. We also have a whole team of engineers at our facility in Danvers, Mass, who are comfortable working with your team to help revamp your designs to be oriented towards adhesives. So if you've traditionally used some different fastening methods, we can look at adhesives as an option, look at how much adhesive you use compared to how many fasteners you use. You can look at the trade-off between strength and weight, things like that. So our engineering team there is always happy to help. And of course, our knowledge of the industry and the cost of our products can help you kind of determine that return on investment, because really it's very specific to each customer and what kind of process you're using, how long you're waiting, what kind of prep is required. So our team, we love looking at people's different processes, learning about what you're doing, and then looking in to see, how we can help you grow and save money in your process through the use of adhesives.
Right. So, I think you made a couple of good points there. I think that's really a differentiator where I think a lot of other distributors, a lot of other suppliers, maybe they come in, maybe they have, great products and something like that, but do they really get, and do they really offer, that level of service in terms of, helping you guys determine the costs of your current process, determine the costs of what the future state might look like, and really kind of demonstrate for you, okay, this is the bottom line here, and this is what this is going to do for you. So I think that's really interesting. And then, to piggyback on that too, I mean, we get a lot of customers come to us, and we've gone through, a number of these processes where customers come to us, they say, okay, we're using this mechanical fastening technique right now. We're cinching parts together. And we're open to the idea of adhesives. Let's talk. And then as we go through the process, we find out that, depending on the backgrounds of the people that are doing this, people tend to underestimate some of the costs that they have today. And so that's where it really helps having that team over there at ITW. So as we go through the process, we say, okay, well, you've accounted for your labor rate, but did you factor in, your opportunity costs? So what else could that worker be doing? What instead of, waiting for that part to cure, or instead of operating that welding, machinery, also the cost of capital is something that people tend to overlook. So, okay, you've sunk, say, $80,000 into a large piece of automated machinery to assemble a mechanical fastener or a mechanical joining technique. What are the other productive uses of those funds that you could do at the same time? So when you really get into the weeds and make sure that you've counted every beam, so to speak, that's when those hidden costs start to come out, and we start to see that ROI become more and more clear to the end users. So I think that's an important thing to kind of emphasize there. Another question we get about is about kind of different materials. So we talked about kind of just metals in general. You talked about galvanized bonding. Can you speak to a little bit about, say, different types of metal? We get asked about brass and copper and maybe mild steel. How does Plexus have products that perform on all types of metals, or what about different types of metals together?
Sure. Yeah, so our products are really designed to bond a bunch of different things. And so I talked about a few primerless metal bonders. We've got the 8000 series. We have our 800 series, our MA830 and MA832. which some of you may use in your processes or be familiar with. We've also got our MA205HV, which is a super fast metal bonder. And we have our PU2105 and H4110. And so typically you kind of go through this range of ease of bonding and more difficult bonding. So you can start with something like a steel, like a cold rolled steel or an aluminum, which are typically pretty easy to bond when they're clean. Of course, over time, both of those materials develop oxide layers on the surface, which interfere with bonding. So, our team always loves to help work with people to develop good prep techniques to eliminate that. Then you move on to things that are a little more difficult, like maybe a zinc chromate part, a zinc coated part, a galvanized part. And that's really where some of our adhesives shine. So the MA8100 series is able to bond those kinds of materials with no prep. Of course, removing any kind of oxide layers or anything that's on the top there, if it's an older material, able to bond to those with no primers. And then even beyond that, like you said, things like brass or copper can be tough, like really tough sometimes. But that's something that the engineers in our lab love to play around with. We love to get creative with new ways to bond things. So if you've got something that you're like, hey, nothing sticks to this, I can't figure it out, we're definitely happy to take a look at it and analyze it and see how we can help you bond.
Right. Excellent. So we got a nice specific question about an application, and let's keep those coming. Those are fun to talk about. So we have from a gentleman, John says, we're interested in adhering large format porcelain panels, so that's extra large porcelain tiles, to metal walls. The concern we have is expansion and contraction between the metal wall and the porcelain, causing cracks in the porcelain. Is there an adhesive that might be able to absorb this? So great question. Colin, can you, or I think we have Mike with us. Would either of you want to venture a stab at that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I can talk about it if you want.
No,
go ahead, Mike.
I'll just to give you an example, there's an industry that uses ceramic tile, and they look for a product that absorb the impact of a wearing application, and MMAs have performed exceptionally well. Typically use an epoxy for that particular application, but when there's a lot of vibration and impact, it doesn't have the impact modifiers that you need to absorb that type of environment. So, just an FYI, we've tested in that industry. We've worked very, very well in that industry, and yes, that would be definitely a good opportunity for us to look at for your application for sure.
Right. And Colin, anything to add to that?
Yeah, thanks, John, for the question. I think Mike kind of hit on a lot of it. Impact modifiers, things that are in those MMA adhesives allow them to absorb those forces a little better. And I think another thing we talk about a lot is elongation of the products. So like Mike mentioned, epoxy is super stiff, really low elongation. When you get into something like our MA8000 series, even the H4110, we've got some really high elongation products that are allowed the product to flex a little bit, to absorb some of the forces in between that metal and that tile, and allow you to have a little bit more flexibility in your bonding application.
Yeah. So good points. And so John, we'll try and reach out to you afterwards to maybe help you more with some more specific recommendations. But and then also to add to that, I think Colin mentioned the 8110 or the 8120. That's kind of where my mind went as well, because of that movement capability. I believe both of those products have about a 50% movement capability. Is that about right? Off the top of my head.
Mm-hmm.
So that's going to give you a lot more toughness and ability to handle that movement compared to standard MMAs or epoxies like they mentioned. Depending, if they're large format porcelain tiles, which I'm pretty familiar with, and there's a lot of that kind of material out there, they can be pretty big tiles. So I think that could also be an application for those two new urethane-based products, the what is it, 4011 and 20? I'm blanking on the numbers for a second, but
Yep, H4110 and PU2105.
4110 and 2105. So many sets of four numbers that I know at this point in my life. But they come in and out. But anyway, there is a good application for those because you do probably have a pretty large surface area. Those adhesives would have a lot of flexibility. They will bond to the metal. We'd have to test. I don't know if you guys would know, or if you've tested it on porcelain. We'd have to see how well they bond to porcelain. But that would be another one to possibly look at. And again, as a cost scenario, and the other thing we have to look at, is it interior, is it exterior, what kind of, is there a wind, like what kind of strength do you need? If it's exterior and we're talking about like wind lift and all that kind of stuff, and you need the strongest possible adhesive, maybe would lean towards that, the 8100 series. But anyway, great question. We're happy to talk to you about that application, a little bit more. So another question that we get a lot is on equipment. Especially when people are comparing us to, say, welding or comparing to, other, capital intensive processes, they're trying to get a feel for, okay, what's my total cost, including materials and equipment on the one hand, and what's my total cost on the other hand? What kind of equipment is involved in dispensing adhesives, and what are kind of the range of, from the small application testing phase all the way up to we're in production? So can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So to start, we have a bunch of different formats that we work with. The first and probably most simple, we have a small 50 or 35 milliliter cartridge. So those can be used for kind of some small testing applications, usually just manually applied through a static mixer. Once you scale up from that a little bit, we've got a 400 or 490 milliliter manual dispensers, which work with our cartridge systems. So those can work if you're doing maybe a few parts, but you need a lot of adhesive and you're okay dispensing manually. We can then scale up from there to a pneumatic dispenser, which if you're dispensing a lot, really helps with the ergonomics, some of that repetitive stress. You're going to eliminate a lot of those potentials for injury, and allow you to dispense really quickly, especially running those dispensing guns at full pressure. You can really move through some parts. And if you have even higher usage from that, you can go to a bulk dispensing setup, which allows you to dispense from pails or drums. And really that equipment is fairly simple. As far as, kind of setting it up and what it requires, it's not a lot. It's, a couple of pumps that are able to move the adhesive through, mix it together and dispense at a equal rate to the ratio that you're hoping to achieve, whether it's 1-to-1 or 10-to-1. And we do, encourage people to keep those systems simple, and they're, certainly lower cost than some other, automated assembly methods that you might use or something like that.
Excellent. So one thing I did want to touch on is, we talked about a little bit earlier, is the supply issues that are hitting, that are impacting everything, and particularly the chemical and adhesive industries. So anything on that either of you would want to share? Because, if somebody's considering adding adhesives to their operation, or maybe they're already considering adhesives and they're looking to either change from a competitive vendor, or maybe we have some existing Plexus customers on the line, anything they should know or anything they should keep in mind as they're going through this process of looking to start using adhesives?
Well, one of the things I would
sure.
mention, I'm sorry, go ahead, Colin.
Okay, I'll start quickly, and then Mike, you've certainly, seen plenty of this, so I'll let you continue. But I think on a baseline, we're definitely affected by this, as everybody is. But I think overall, as a team, ITW Performance Polymers has done very well during really focused on helping our customers and getting material out there as quickly as we can. Mike, I'm going to let you continue here.
Yeah, I mean, everybody's having problems, like you said earlier. The key is with ITW and its size, we have made certain arrangements with certain vendors where we are on their priority list. So what's happening is we are gaining a lot of market through others that can't get raw materials to make their product. So we have been doing a very good job staying ahead of that. And we picked up a lot of new business, and we're retaining it because we have very good suppliers at this time. Now, don't get me wrong, there are glitches, with certain, products, but what we try to do is we try to lead with products that we know there's no raw material issues, so that you won't run into an issue going forward, just in case you are able to switch to our adhesive technologies.
Sure.
we will stay ahead of that for you.
Yeah, it's something that we've been kind of trying to telegraph to customers, and at the risk of of repeating ourselves too often, but we want to be loud and clear, and make sure that they're getting clear messaging from us. So for new people looking to start using adhesives, or for existing customers that are using adhesives on a regular basis, we just ask that people are aware of it, that they account for that. In the process, if you're looking at there's some kind of ramp up time to really get started with the adhesives. Just make sure that in that planning phase, you're allowing, to whatever extent, placing orders as far ahead of time as you can, trying to keep track of your inventory. We're going to try and proactively ask you to find out, what is your run rate, how much adhesive are you going through per day, per week, whatever, so that we can make sure that from a supply perspective that we're doing everything we can to kind of meet the bar wherever you place it. So that's where it becomes a collaborative process. And that's just, we're happy to do our part. And then we just ask for you to, try and stay ahead of it as best you can. And if we're communicating clearly, what's going on in the marketplace, then it's just going to set us both up for success. So just wanted to have that out there.